Oh, hello. Sorry. I was just having a look at the Doctor Who RPG book here. Because I thought we were going to do this today, but look how big it is.
It's massive.
It's massive.
Yes. Look at that.
And we haven't planned for it properly, have we? Because it looks more.
You
more
say
complex.
we. What Geoff actually means is me, because I thought. I didn't even know there was a book to read, and then when you showed me that, I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm never going to read that in 20 minutes." That's just not going to happen.
Yeah, it looks complicated, but probably like a lot of those sort of things, once you get into it, it's probably not. So we are going to try it for an episode.
It just needs a little bit more preparation than yours truly had catered for.
Yes. So if anyone has played it and is experienced in it, let us know, give us some tips, and what we need to do with it, and how.
I have some suggestions.
Do you? What are they?
You don't want to know. They involve matches.
Well, I know you'll get upset if you lose. But
I also don't have any patience either. This is my eternal problem is managing my lack of patience. And sitting through a rule book, because I never do. I never read the instruction books for anything, like new TVs, computers, or whatever. Never read the instructions. Never do. At the very most, I might just read the sort of quick setup guide. 1, 2, 3, easy steps.
Yeah.
Bullet points. That's all I do. That looks like about 250, 300 pages of text.
Well,
is there pictures?
Well, there are. I was just going to say, this is actually a really lovely book.
Yeah, it looks very nice.
Let me just enlarge my screen.
But it's the size of a novel.
So there's lots of text. Look, as you can see, is
this all about the game?
Yeah. So
wow.
I mean, to be fair, it was worth buying for the pictures alone. There's Billy. Lovely Dalek. So
yes.
It was good. It took a long time to come because I can't remember when I ordered it, but it was
a while back, wasn't it?
It was a while back, yeah. And then it was delayed because of COVID and stuff. So it came it looks great. So yeah, we need to give it a go. Maybe for next week. So, Paul, what are we going to do instead? Because
instead, yes. Well, I did come up with a rather smashing idea, Mr. Geoff, of doing another one of our Essential series. So we've done Essential 13th Doctor, Essential 11th Doctor, and Essential 12th Doctor, I believe. I don't know why I just didn't go 13, 12, 11.
No,
actually, I was kind of mix it up. It's sort of random kind of guy that I am. So I thought, let's move away from Essential Doctors for a temporary pause, and let's look at Essential Daleks.
Ooh.
Not a bad idea, where we can pick out what we believe are the essential Dalek stories that are must-watch events in the life of any Doctor Who fan, new and old.
And how are we going to approach these?
Aha! Well, you see, I came up with another cunning plan. I thought, let's make it easy on ourselves. I will do the Dalek stories of the classic series, and you, my old chum, can do the Dalek stories of the modern revival or new series.
A good plan to me.
That's what I thought. That was a great plan. Yeah. I love that plan. When I thought of it, I thought, you know what? That is a very good plan, isn't it? I was congratulating myself. I do that a lot.
You were most pleased with yourself for that. Yeah.
Yes, I was, indeedy. Yes.
So, because of the lack of planning on this one, we haven't asked anyone for their essential Dalek episodes. I tell you
we're just going out there. What?
I tell you what, I'll do a tweet now.
Ooh.
And we'll see if anyone comes in with anything. So I'll say we're recording a new
right now, Geoff. We are recording right this very second.
It is our essential
quality entertainment product on our podcast
episodes. Let us know yours, and we can.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, as Geoff types, he always reads it out to himself.
I do, yeah.
Always muttering under his breath, reading it out, intoning.
Okay, prepare for. There we go. Right. It's going out So,
boom, it's out there. Yes.
The tweet is
this
out,
will be interesting.
So, right.
Of course, we might have a big fat zero at the end of it.
We might do.
It's not exactly prime time Twitter at the moment, is
No.
it? What, 11 o'clock-ish on a Wednesday.
Yeah, but you never know.
Daytime one, both of us skiving off work to record a podcast.
Yes. Yeah, well, maybe our trusty fan base will pull through for us.
I hope so.
So do I.
Time is money, my friend.
Yeah. and
see how much I charge a day, hey? You know what I mean? Anyway,
right.
so
let's kick this off. You start.
Let's do that.
So
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to do that. Then I just knew it. I knew. Go on. Yes, go on.
Okay, give us your number 5.
Are we just doing 5 each? Are we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's right. That's fine. Right. So my number 5. Okay, I had to think about this, actually. In fact, do you know what? I'm going to scrub them off because you're probably doing those. There we go. So that makes it a little bit easier. So I'm going to go right back to the black and white era because you kind of have to with this, really. My number 5, and I had to sort of think about this again. It was either The Dead Planet, a.k.a. The Daleks, the original story, or its kind of sequel for Series 2, The Dalek Invasion of Earth. And I'm kind of thinking, well, because the Daleks, the Dead Planet, the Terry Nation's original is kind of like the whole origins. But that's the thing. I thought it's the origin story of the Daleks, but it kind of isn't really an origin story, because the origin story actually comes much later on. It's our first Dalek story. It's the first one that was ever written for Doctor Who. So you kind of think, well, from that perspective, it has to go in, and it does have a lot of very cool moments, and it's very creepy, and it's very weird and unsettling, and it's just pretty awesome. It's just really, really good. But I think in the end, I'm going to have to go for the Dalek Invasion of Earth. And obviously what I'm using is the kind of umbrella titles that we call these things because, obviously back in those days, as it is with the new era, each episode pretty much had its own title. Yeah. So I'm going to go with Dalek Invasion, of Earth. Or 2158 or whatever it is actually in the BBC TV version of it, the original.
Use the umbrella.
Yes, and I have to sort of take the Peter Cushing widescreen Technicolor version out of my head, or was it Colorama? I can't remember what it's called, something like that, wasn't it? Anyway, some kind of colour thing, and just go to that tiny, grainy black and white 4:3 screen. But it's great. It's a brilliant story.
It is really good. I really. Well, we did a Peter Cushing podcast a little while ago, and that was the first time I'd watched those.
Was it really?
Yeah.
You probably said that at the time, actually, and I've just completely forgotten.
Yeah.
I probably ripped you for it as well, didn't I?
Yeah, because I was too cheap to buy them.
Yes, I do remember.
I watched the season 2 collection.
Indeed,
and that was the first time I saw Hartnell's, the original of it, and I really enjoyed it. It was a great story. It was quite a lot of fun in it, and out of the two of them.
What would you go for?
Well, you sort of feel like you have to go with Dalek, the original, the first story.
I mean, you wouldn't lose anything by watching it, that's for sure.
No, I mean, as a piece of, not content, a piece of history, it's a pretty, important episode, story. So, but for fun, probably Dalek Invasion of Earth. I think there was a lot of stuff I liked in there.
Yeah, and it's got that wonderful thing of kind of juxtaposing the alien fantasy universe of Doctor Who, the Daleks, and sticking them in everyday familiar surroundings, which is where for me Doctor Who really comes alive and becomes even more creepy and more immediate, if you like. It's that old thing of finding a Yeti on the loo or in Tootingbeck Station or whatever the quote I'm misquoting is. But it's also a good one because right at the end, I mean, it's Susan Foreman's last story, right? The Doctor's grand store. So it's the first time we see a companion leaving the show. One of the regulars, one of the mainstays. She was literally there right from day one. In fact, the very first episode in Doctor Who is pretty much all about her. Yeah. The unearthly child story. So to see her kind of leave here. And it's a really moving moment as well. The Doctor literally shuts the TARDIS door on her and won't let her in and dematerializes. He gives her this great speech about going forward in all her beliefs to prove that he is not wrong in his and all that, which is kind of become a meme in the in the modern era. So it's good from that perspective. You know, it has that nice emotional punch at the end, and then throughout, you know, leading up to that point, we have an absolute classic cliffhanger at the end of episode 1, which I think, if memory serves, is called World's End. And, you know, so the TARDIS is materialising kind of, it looks like a bombed out London. Well, it is a bombed out London. And it's very close. You know, this is 1964, I think. And it's very close in people's memories to World War II. And, you know, a lot of the kind of visuals are very much within that zone. You know, they're from that, you know, they're pulling from that memory, if you like, which even then in the 60s, if we believe all the stories, because, you know, I'm not that old, but, well, even in the 70s when I was around, there was still a lot of war damage that was being renovated. You know, a lot of old towns that were being demolished, and factories and mills and riverbanks and all stuff that had been hit during the war, and it was still in the process of being rebuilt and, you know, turned down. So, you know, it must have been very, very fresh in the mind of everybody in the 60s watching this. And of course, that's part of the shorthand of telling a story. You know, you see that bombed out London, and you kind of instantly know what's gone on. What's weird about it is the kind of zombie-like shuffling robo-men, which kind of harangued the Doctor and Ian in that first episode.
Which is sort of like people on their phones today.
Well, there you go. Or even, like in what was it, Army of Ghosts or something?
Yeah, with
isn't
the little ear things.
Yeah. It's that kind of control. So it's quite a prescient story from that perspective, and it's the first time we see a lot of Terry Nation tropes, if you like. You know, even down to the naming of people and the countdown at the end of episode 4, I think. Has been a little while since I last watched it. I'll be honest. I'm doing a Geoff here, not watching the stories before I'm talking about them.
Well, I don't know,
but I have seen it a lot of times, and I absolutely love it. And I think, as with a lot of these serials, it's best if you watch them one episode at a time. You know, it's tempting to binge the whole lot, but this is 6 episodes. And I think, particularly with a lot of the Hartnell stuff, you know, a lot of the early years of Doctor Who, if you do that, you kind of lose some engagement. It depends what sort of mood you're in and what sort of personality you are. But I do still find them better to watch one a day, at most 2 a day. You know, leave a bit of time between each episode, and I think you get a lot more out of them.
Yeah, I saw something recently actually that said that, you know, streaming models have kind of destroyed cliffhangers.
I saw something that might have even been the same article, Geoff.
Quite possibly, yeah. And, you know, it's a good point. You know, cliffhangers were, you know, an art or can be, you know, so powerful and a hook,
totally.
to watch. But I think it was the Netflix guy, so people will watch two episodes, then they'll watch 10 minutes of the third one.
Yeah, to get over that cliffhanger trauma.
Yeah, and you know, I think it's quite sad, really, in a way, how TV has changed in so many ways, and, you know, the damage that streaming has done to cinema and, you know, TV structures and stuff like that. And I'm not talking so much about, okay, well, you know, something's going out at this time and that's the only time you can watch it until the repeat or whatever, but just, you know, cliffhangers have been less effective now, and, you know, that time when you know, Tennant had that fake out regeneration, you know, back in Stolen Earth, you know, absolutely brilliant. Everyone on the edge of their seat for a week, not knowing what was going on.
Talking about it at work, in the playgrounds.
And, you know, on other shows as well. And, you know, not to mention, like, you know, the spoilers that you get online these days, which, you know, almost kind of can make watching something actually redundant because it's all online.
Because you've seen all the good bits.
Or
you've heard about them ahead of time.
And it's so good. You know, cliffhangers are just brilliant. I love them. And
I agree.
You still get them on shows, but they lose some of the impact when you can immediately resolve it.
They can do, but I always think there's a kind of self-discipline on the part of you that's needed, and it's really up to you. You know, you can take the chance or take the opportunity to watch the next 10 minutes and get over that, you know, I can't wait to see what happens next kind of thing. Or you can actually discipline yourself and go through it and put yourself through that, you know, and experience the thrill. And, you know, I suppose being a little bit old school, because
We're
obviously I grew up when there wasn't any
yeah.
streaming and anything like that. But I do enjoy a good binge. The latest series of Picard is a really good one. Series 3, which we talked about with Darren Scott briefly, because I had to cut him off and say, "Don't talk because I haven't seen it yet." Now I have seen it, and I wanted to wait until it was all done because I wanted to watch one a day at least. And that's how I like to do it. I mean, waiting a week is difficult, because especially for me at my ripe old age, Geoff, because I can't always remember everything that I watched in the previous week. I barely remember stuff from one day to the next. So watching it from on a Monday and a Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on is the next best thing. And then also I can manage a day of cliffhanger, and there were some great cliffhangers in that.
Right,
There's some astonishing moments, absolutely, for any Star Trek fan, Next Generation fan, some truly, truly astonishing moments. And to kind of lose that, as you said, I think does take a lot away from the program. But it's up to us as viewers. I think we've got the choice.
It's nice, I think, with like Disney Plus that it's weekly on their episodes. So because part of the reason they did that is so that everyone largely is on the same page. So you haven't got someone who stayed up all night and watched all 8 hours or something. Everyone is. That's why WandaVision and stuff was so popular and successful, because everyone was talking about it at the same time, and that they were great as well. And I saw that Apple TV dropped stuff, every Friday or something.
Yeah, they've done that with a few series. Yeah, I mean, Foundation, one of theirs, which I really enjoyed, was a weekly event. I mean, the good thing about that, when they do that, is you can watch it as they drop it, and then go and talk about it online and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then once it's all complete, then you can binge it back to back if you want.
There are some things like The 100 is a show I like, and I found that was better to sort of try and binge it over 2 weeks or something, because it had so much going on in it that I would forget some things from week to week.
That's it.
Like that.
Yeah, you find it happens a lot the older you get.
Yeah. And just on the subject of Apple TV, I've tweeted about this a couple of times. Excuse my language. It's utter shit. The quality on there is appalling. I don't know if anyone else has noticed this. I tried it was set up to just go out in 4K. Stuttering, breakup,
really
awful artifact.
What are you watching it on?
My TV. And
wow. Is it so it's going straight to your TV? It's not going through a console or anything?
It's on the TV, yeah. And I've had to switch it to SD mode, which is like...
No, that's criminal. You shouldn't be forced to do that. Yeah, exactly. Apple TV, sort it out right now.
And I looked it up online.
Oh my goodness! Yeah,
and there was quite a lot of other people saying, basically, why is it unwatchable in anything other than SD? And there was sort of not really any sort of answer.
What's your TV?
It's a 4K TV. Everything else streams fine. Disney, Amazon, Netflix.
Well, what I mean is, it might be the app itself, I suppose, mightn't it?
Well, that's one thought, but how. I don't know what the right word is, but if you're going to make it so that it'll only work well on an Apple TV, it's pretty.
Yeah, I wouldn't buy an Apple TV just to watch Apple TV. I must admit, on the app on my TV for Apple TV, there are some errors on it. The picture quality seems okay. I don't think it's any worse on mine, but what I get actually is weird artifacts in the text. You get like instead it says like instead of giving you the title. For example, like Ted Lasso Series 3, it says there's a load of ampersands, hashtags, and little symbols, and then a sort of series. It's almost like the kind of the code that would be filled by the actual title, and it's not reading the title properly. So it's just putting the raw code in there, which is a bit fucked up, to be honest. So they do need to sort it out.
I'm glad
and the interface as well. Jesus, I mean it's probably fine on a tablet, on an iPad. But on the TV, it's just an absolute dog's dinner.
Yeah, it is.
It's just not good.
Fortunately, I got a trial 5 months free.
I got that
through my credit card. That's why I did it. But if I was paying for this, I'd be I wouldn't be renewing. And I tweeted it a couple of weeks ago. I filmed the TV to show what it looked like. Yeah. And you'll have to look for it, but it's absolutely appalling. Anyway, right.
Sorry about that, listeners.
Sorry if you like Apple TV. Sorry, I was sort of enjoying that one with Jennifer Garner, the last thing he told me, and I want to watch the Silo with Rebecca Ferguson.
Oh yeah. That's based on a book, isn't it? I was
Yeah.
going to read that book, but it's like massive,
Right, okay.
Which is a proper time investment, and it's
Yeah.
like a trilogy. They're also massive.
Yeah.
So now I don't have to.
Yeah, you just
watch
it. Yeah. So I'm going to go.
Anyway, yes.
With my so. These essential episodes are, for me, not necessarily ones I think you have to watch to get a full story or something like that, because it doesn't really work like that in Doctor Who. And, the Daleks are, once you kind of know them, they turn up, they do their thing. That's a story.
I might have to disagree with you in a moment when we come back to mine, but let's go with this for now.
In the modern era, there's not plot threads that hang over between, episodes and stuff particularly. So I'm going to go here at number 5 with Dalek.
Yes.
From the Christopher Eccleston Ninth Doctor series. So this was episode 6. The first, well, I'm sure anyone listening knows the first time we saw them in the revived series, and there was a lot of talk that they hadn't been able to get the rights and stuff to use the Daleks, and they weren't going to be coming back, but they managed to do it, and I thought they were reintroduced to a new audience brilliantly, just doing that lone Dalek to show how threatening and scary they can be. And it kind of was a really sort of actiony episode that had quite a lot of drama to it as well, and really did a great job of showing the Doctor's fear of these this enemy and his greatest enemy, even just that one of them. So there's a lot of stuff. I think we did an episode. We re-watched it, didn't we?
We did, and
yes.
we sort of went into it in quite some detail.
Yes,
didn't
we did. So I won't go into it too much here, because we wanted to see if it still held up after all these years.
Listen to that episode, listeners. It's one of our better ones, I think.
Yeah,
we must have been on form that day.
Yeah, so it's a great episode for a huge number of reasons, and of course there's a lot of payoff from it. At the end of that season as well. So I'm going to go with Dalek for number 5.
Good one. I like that. So okay, so we've got in the Dalek Invasion of Earth, and we've got Daleks. We've almost like bookended, like. Sort of, I like that. Okay, that's all cool. So actually, because Dalek is literally the first of the modern series, isn't it? There isn't one before that. So interesting. Okay, so I'm going to go with. Again, actually, I had to sort of toss up this one, and this is it's a difficult one because I was kind of thinking Eve of the Daleks, but I don't really like it that much, actually, to be honest. It's one of these stories, it's a Troughton story, and it was written by David Whittaker, who did the amazing Power of the Daleks, which I absolutely love. But Evil of the Daleks, I'm not, when it eventually turned out, it kind of been mythologized over the years. And when I finally got around to watching it, and it's only animated now, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can listen to the audio, which I had done years and years ago. And there's like one surviving episode plus a few fragments. But yeah, I am going to go with Evil of the Daleks, but it's not one of my favourite stories. I think the reason why I have to put it in here really is because it's very different to any other Dalek story around. It's quite unique, really, and it's got its fans, and people do love it because of that, which is fine. It's great. It's just my personal preference. I just find the story actually just a little bit sort of by the numbers in certain places, but the core conceit that the Daleks are kind of manipulated into, well, not manipulated, but they're in receipt of this thing called the human factor, which kind of humanizes them. So the first couple of episodes is a bit of a sort of a bit of a mystery chase. It follows on directly from the end of the previous serial, which is the Faceless Ones, which saw Ben and Polly leaving. And then we get the sort of then we get the Doctor and Jamie. They're still at Gatwick Airport, but where the TARDIS landed for the Faceless Ones, but it's been carted away in the back of a truck. So in following this truck, the Doctor and Jamie McCrimmon come to an old antique shop, and then it starts to get a little bit complicated, and a lot of backwards and throwing, to and fro. Who's the bad guys? Who's the good guys? There's some sinister thugs around and characters, and one thing, it is populated with a massive list of characters. There's a lot of people in this, and and then it sort of turns out that we've got Waterfield, the main guy's daughter Victoria is being sort of held hostage, and there's a lot of stuff packed into it. And certainly in the first 3 episodes, it's almost you can't put it down. The cliffhangers are great. Talking about cliffhangers, and it kind of just it's really action packed. It's got a lot of pacing. It moves very quickly from one thing to another. And then of course the Daleks have some sort of thing going on. There's some time travel with mirrors. It's like everything is kind of thrown at this story. We go backwards between sort of 19th century, the 20th century, and then at some point we end up going forward into the far future, into Skaro, where we then see the Emperor Dalek, who's this big massive stationary object that looks kind of Dalek-like, and which I think, for kids of the 60s had massive impact, huge impact. And then, of course, it has this massively explosive finale which does see the final end of the Daleks. And it was, I believe, written to be the final end of the Daleks. Terry Nation was taking them off to the States, so I wasn't sure if he was ever going to be writing for Doctor Who anymore. The Daleks had kind of had their day, if you like. I think the whole Dalek mania thing was maybe kind of fizzling out, and it was maybe they were seen as a little bit old hat. So David Whittaker wrote this explosive finale to the Daleks, and we didn't see them throughout the rest of the Patrick Troughton era, and it was only some way into the Third Doctor's era that they kind of came back with the Day of the Daleks, which we covered in a previous episode. So yeah, my number 4 is going to be Evil of the Daleks, because again, I think it's a good one to watch, and it's one that you can make your own mind up. It has some incredible moments in there. There's no doubt about it. I just think, for me, there's a lot of toing and froing in the house with Victoria and Jamie and the Daleks, but there's some great stuff in there. And the fact, going back to the whole human doctor thing, it's the human factor thing. It's the Doctor who puts that through some trickery into the Daleks, and they start behaving like kids, which is great. And again, it's another David Whittaker thing. He showed the Daleks doing different things in Power of the Daleks. Previously to this, they were kind of, they were sort of subservient. They were, they were sort of servitors of this, human colony on Vulcan in the far future. And here we see them sort of playing trains like a group of kids in a primary school playground and going through all that. And it's just a wonderful thing to do. We don't see the Daleks changed in that way, and of course that has a massive impact on what happens when when the action moves back to Skaro. So there's a lot of locations, there's a lot of pacing, a little bit of a run around in eps 4 and 5, but episode 6 is an absolute powerhouse of drama and explosive action.
That sounds good. Yeah, I have to admit, I haven't.
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen that one. No. I know
when you do, let me know what you think.
Yeah,
because I'd be interested.
It's like you said, it's mostly missing now, isn't it?
It is, but the animation is really good. Actually, there's some glorious detail on the animation.
I've said this before, but I haven't bought any of the recent animations because I've just been waiting for the collection sets to come out, and so I
get them in steelbook. So then, so I've got the steelbook. So it's still a little collector's thing on its own.
Yeah.
Probably cost me far too much money, to be honest, but
aren't they? I've looked this one up, and they're trying to put human DNA or something into the Daleks to make them superior somehow. It sounds a bit like
that's the human factor. Yeah. So I think what they're trying to do is it's basically that. I'm not going to try and explain it. It's just it's that.
It's a bit like Daleks in Manhattan. Where they.
It is actually, yeah. It does take a little bit for that, and just thinking about it as well. Actually, now I was going to say this on the previous one in Daleks Invasion of Earth, but it applies equally here. That these stories are bonkers plots. There's the whole idea of the Daleks sort of trying to drill down into the core of the planet in order to steer it around for some reason, and it's got to be Earth, right? Because whatever properties Earth has, and drive it into a massive weapon of mass destruction. And again, the whole Dalek factor thing, and why come back to sort of 19th century? What is it with that whole link? I don't get it. If you analyse the plot too closely, it just comes. It's just completely bonkers and off the wall. But what the hell? It doesn't matter. It's such joyous fun to get through.
If you're enjoying it, that can be all that matters, really. And
again, when you're a kid watching this stuff, the Daleks are going to take over the Earth, so they can steer it around like a kind of mobile Death Star type thing.
Yeah, and that's fun. The Daleks must have a thing for drills, because they had one in the Power of the Doctor, didn't they?
They've got a big thing on drills. Which I think is a direct reference to this kind of bonkers idea. Dalek invasion, and of course it's realised in Journey's End, isn't it?
Yes.
They finally get to do what they set out to do, obviously not just with Earth, but with many planets.
Loads.
So what the hell? So there you go. So there's my number 4. Okay. It is Evil of the Daleks.
Okay.
Which isn't what I'd written down here, by the way.
So I'm going to go for Magician's Apprentice / The Witch's Familiar, which is the first and second episodes of season 9 with the 12th Doctor and Clara and a lot of Missy. I really enjoy this two-parter because it's pretty epic. We get to, but we get further development of Clara and the Doctor's relationship, and Clara's kind of sort of proto-Doctor type thing, and so the title has got a couple of readings. So there's a lot about the Doctor and Missy and their relationship. So you could see him as the magician, and she's his apprentice, and and she's the witch, and he's the familiar. But also I think it applies with Clara as well. But because she ends up kind of paired with Missy at one point, doesn't she?
And maybe the Dr. Davros as well.
Well, I was going to say, because of that's all explored brilliantly in here as well. Davros is sort of, this is the first time we've seen him since Journey's End, isn't it? In season 4, because he skipped Matt's Doctor, and he's brilliantly played, and he's weakened here, and he's sitting in his chair, and he sort of, it's a bit like the Doctor and Missy. There's a sort of bizarre respect and not maybe friendship, but these sort of two beings kind of drawn together, but also hating each other at the same time, and probably more so from Davros towards the Doctor. The Doctor, he always tries to do the right thing, doesn't he? We see that little moral dilemma at the beginning when the Doctor goes into it's a war field, isn't it, with the eye hands and
hand mines.
Hand mines. That's it. Yeah. And there's a lad there, who's wandering around, and it turns out to be Davros.
I know.
As a child,
that was brilliant. The very first time I saw that, and it just started to creep up on me that who it might be just before it was revealed. It was brilliant, brilliant.
It's quite. It's brilliantly done to see him there as a, sort of lost, scared young boy, and then later see him as to what he's turned into and what the evil he's caused and what he's done to himself, and and all of that, and the sort of interplay between them both is brilliant, and you kind of are led to believe that Davros is opening up to the Doctor, and which I think he probably was for real, but the end goal was, a trap. And of course, he does open up for real by the reveal that he has still actually got eyes. That they're not just the black, pits. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, they may have been eyes that he just had genetically added to himself just for that effect, because you wouldn't put Davros past doing that. To be honest, just knowing that if you can see somebody eye to eye, there's more, and the Doctor's weakness, if you like, at least in Davros's eyes, is his compassionate nature. which is addressed in Genesis of the Daleks. Davros explicitly says, "I'm going to exploit this weakness," and he does it again here. So I kind of think that Davros has literally just had temporary eyes put in just for that effect. It was all part of his plan to get this regeneration energy from the Doctor.
Yeah.
And Davros' sole aim above everything else is to achieve power, ultimate power. He wants to be up among the gods. It's right there.
Yeah, and there's some great stuff in this episode. The Doctor riding in Davros' chair,
bonkers.
Yeah, and then he produces a cup of tea.
Who wouldn't like to do that?
Somewhere, yeah.
He just has a cup of tea.
Yeah, and then Missy sort of being cartoon villain and hanging Clara upside down on a rope and wanting to poke her with a stick and stuff. And then, of course, with Clara, we get her put back in Dalek casing and stuff, and which is traumatic enough.
Love that.
But when you look back at her future splinter self and her first intro in the show as Oswin, when she was a Dalek, there's kind of painful echoes and memories there. And it's just a brilliant episode. It's globe trotting with its adventure, and they go back to Skaro, and huge amount of stuff going on in it. It's a great one. Really like it. So
Brilliant.
That's my numero 4.
I like that. Okay, so now we're moving up to my number 3, so the midway point, if you like. And I think, really...
We're getting some tweets in, by the way.
Oh, are we?
Yeah.
Go on then. Let's have a break.
Oh, okay.
Let's have
All
a Twitter break before
I'll
I reveal my number 3.
Some music here. So Matt Price, who's at Matt_the Hoovian, says, "How much time you got?" He says,
maybe I should have said my bit first then.
He says, "The Daleks, Evil of the Daleks, Day of the Daleks, Planet of the Daleks, Genesis of the Daleks, Revelation of the Daleks, Remembrance of the Daleks, Daleks of the Dalek." Oh no, sorry, it's just Dalek. Stolen Earth / Journey's End, Resolution, Eve of the Daleks. So that's quite a list there. So a couple of first and second and third and fourth. All the classics there. Yeah. Interestingly, no 11th or 12th Doctors in there, Matt.
Yeah, so, they seem to be quite divisive.
Yeah,
the 11th and 12th.
Well,
the Moffat penned.
People
episodes.
are not going to like my number 3 then.
So wait for that then.
I'm just going to go to Jason Thompson, who's at Jason_JTT. So Jason's done a little thread here. Has to be Dalek. If I'd read this before, I could have tied it in with my number 5. There, couldn't I?
Was it there before you started talking about yours?
Maybe not, actually. I don't think there is any other episode that does everything with them in such a short time. It starts with the Dalek at a disadvantage when all it can do is argue verbally with the Doctor, and it still gets under his skin. Then it uses manipulation of Rose's sympathy to get what it needs to restore itself, and then one Dalek finally gets to prove the boast made in the Dalek's master plan, which is one Dalek is capable of exterminating all. Then there's all the stuff about racial purity, the dislike for the unlike, and the way its own survival led it to become something it hated. Then there's the way it brings out the worst in the Doctor, culminating Rose's shock that he's pointing a huge gun at her. I'd forgotten about that. And on top of that, it's brilliantly portrayed, taking everything people have ridiculed the Daleks for, subverting it, the sucker, the stairs, the rotating shoulder section. And finally, it was never going to be possible to hide the return of the Daleks in the first new series, but imagine that first scene if we hadn't known what it was in advance.
Yeah. If it had been titled something else, Metaltron or something.
Well, that's what they call it.
We had no idea what it was going to be.
And that's an interesting point there that Jason's made. It goes back to a little bit what we were talking about with cliffhangers and spoilers and stuff. Sometimes I feel that shows... in an effort to, entice people in to watch, spoil so many things in advance, and Moffat was guilty of it, and RTD to an extent as well, and people, trashed Chibnall era for its secrets, but you know what, that worked for me, to not know that Jack was back, or about the fugitive Doctor, and all of that stuff, and it's like going to see a Marvel film or something. Having secrets and not knowing everything is so much more effective, and so it's a tightrope, you know, you need to lure people in to watch, but when you give it all away, you know, it's not quite as exciting. I know you go, you know, the Daleks are back, bloody hell, got to watch that. But yeah, he's right. Imagine if, you know, they hadn't shown that. But yeah, of course, the difficulty is, well, you know, we need people to watch it to keep it going, and so
it had to be a success, that first series, if it was ever going to continue, wasn't it? And that episode gave it that kind of mid-season boost, if you like, because if there's anybody on the planet who'd never heard of Doctor Who, or even if they had and thought, well, you know, that old series from 60s, 70s and 80s that I never really used to watch much, but I remember the Daleks. You know, everyone knows the Daleks. It's you know, from that sort of era, it's ingrained in cultural history. They are a cultural icon.
Yeah, absolutely.
So announcing that the Daleks are back and giving the Dalek its own story and calling it Dalek, just like you said, it would pull in. I think it's a difficult one, as you said, but the fan in me would obviously want to maintain the secret, but the commercial, you know, beast inside that often rules would say, no, shout about it, get it out there, get as many people watching this as you can.
And it's understandable, but it comes with a cost, doesn't it? You know?
I think certain things like you know, with the finale of the Doctor Falls, The World Enough and Time, that's it. The reveal that we were going to see the Master and the Mondasian Cybermen. That could have been held back because that makes no impact on anybody outside of Doctor Who fandom, really. You know, nobody would remember, and if they did, it would be from, you know, eons past. The Mondasian Cybermen from the 10th planet, which is what, 1966. So, but it's purely a fan thing. But the fact they kind of, you know, showed us those guys, you know, I wish they'd waited. Honestly, I would have literally jumped and hit the roof in excitement if I hadn't known those Cybermen were coming back into Doctor Who.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? You know, you need to hype it, but you know, you often I feel sometimes Doctor Who gets robbed of its biggest surprises,
of its moments. Yeah, exactly. You know, when we're talking about moment TV, like even back to Journey's End, it wasn't it's the one before it, isn't it? The Stolen Earth. That cliffhanger, which you talked about a minute ago, that, you know, that nobody had any idea that was coming, and how powerful was it, really? And it was, and everyone was talking about Rose, you know, Rose possibly coming back, which had kind of been sort of teased throughout that series, and then she does come back, and that's a big thing. And it's kind of like Captain Jack in a way with, or the Jadoon in the Fugitive Doctor. Yeah, we're pleased to see the Jadoon. There's hints that perhaps there's some rumours that we might see Captain Jack, and of course he comes back, and that's a great surprise. But the actual real surprise is the whole thing about about the Fugitive Doctor herself, and nobody ever saw that coming. So you can focus on one thing and be that the thing. You can even have a sub-layer, which is the rumour and the speculation, but your big guns are still waiting, and nobody sees them. They're totally camouflaged under tarpaulins. So regardless of what kind of internet drones are flying over the landscape looking for the tiniest little piece of information, they don't see those big surprises. But and so there are ways to kind of manage expectations within the modern age. And
also, you know, like filming outdoors in a public place with a well-known guest, like, you know, I've already seen now that Lin-Manuel Miranda is in the next series of Who because he was spotted at the mock-up Abbey Road thing they've been filming. Okay, well, you know, that's spoiled, you know.
But again, that's an actor, isn't it? We don't know what part he's playing. I don't know what he's character
playing,
he is.
But it's quite nice to sort of get, you know, a surprise. And it worked with The Fugitive Doctor because obviously they filmed publicly with Jo Martin, but everyone was tricked about what she was.
Yeah,
you know,
nobody knew.
Brilliant.
Just a tour guide in the big public place in Gloucester Cathedral. She's a tour guide. And back at the lighthouse, remote location, nobody's watching. She's the Doctor.
Yeah,
she's the Doctor, mate.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Where are we at now then? What's it's my number 3, isn't it?
Your number 3,
Okay, so this is going to sound really boring to many people, but it has to be done, and it can only be Genesis of the Daleks. I'm putting it at my number 3 because I've still got 2 and 1 in my back pocket. Genesis of the Daleks is, as it says, the origin story of the Daleks. Really, that's what it is. Now, it might have turned out slightly different if Terry Nation had written this a decade earlier in the 60s, it probably wouldn't have been quite the same origin story. But all we really knew up until that point was the fact that the Daleks had kind of were a mutated race. They had been Dals and Thals on Skaro. Yeah. That's the thing. So they're two different races. The Dals have become sort of increasingly isolated, locked away in their kind of metal city and their metal tanks, and had become kind of hideously mutated and kind of their lust for sort of greed and domination was really over the Thals, but obviously through the course of subsequent stories was literally the universe. That's what they want. Yeah. So when we come to Tom Baker's era, and there's a little bit of kind of retroactive correction in a way, or it's that, what do they call it? It's not course correction. That's a horrible word. I hate when they say that. It's the thing, sort of retrofitting. That's the word I'm looking at. There's a little bit of that going on. So times have changed slightly, and the genesis story of the Daleks is now not the Dals and the Thals, but the Khaleds and the Thals. And Khaleds is a cunning anagram of the word Dalek. I mean, I love that. The fact that alien races not only speak English, which you can get over by having a translator, but they also write English as well. They use, the same Latin alphabet that we use commonly. Yeah. So, but then who's to say Skaro in the far future isn't some kind of offshoot of a human colony? Yeah. Who knows, Anyway, back to the case in point. So Genesis of the Daleks is in many ways the ultimate Dalek story. It covers so much stuff. It's just unreal, and it's also the kind of source code, if you like, and at least in, I think Russell T Davies did actually say this, it's the start of the Time War. I think in Russell's head, this was the start of the big battle between the Time Lords and the Daleks, because the initial conceit of Genesis is that the Time Lords divert the Doctor and his companions, Harry Sullivan and Sarah Jane Smith, into and take them back in time to the very beginnings of the Dalek program, if you like. Yeah. And they're doing this specifically. The Doctor's given a brief by Time Lord right at the start of this to either stop their creation entirely, to destroy them before they become the massive threat to the universe and creation that the Time Lords have foreseen, or at least to alter their birth in some way that it steers them on a different course, perhaps a more peaceful one, where they actually become forces of good rather than complete domination and evil. And back in the day, back in the 70s, I guess that's a great opening, regardless of any sort of subtext or whatever you want to make of it. And on its own, it's just brilliant. So here's the Doctor being told he's been given the key to the weapon that's going to defeat his oldest, most feared, deadliest enemy throughout the universe, right? Because the Daleks and the Doctor, that's the two sides of the coin, isn't it? They are sort of that kind of foes with each other. So he's given this mission to do, and of course it doesn't quite. It was never an easy one anyway. But of course, what we see as the adventure plays out is the story of their development. Now, the Daleks are actually—it's not right at the start. They're at the point where they have everything apart from their weapons. We see the first Dalek gun being fitted to one of the Dalek tanks, and they don't quite have that single-minded drive yet. Davros is working on it. He just needs to figure out how to do it, how to remove, the last remaining vestiges of compassion and emotion, and just fill them with this drive and this hatred that steers them through their quest for domination. And of course, all of this is purely in a part of Davros's program to raise himself above the gods. As I said earlier, that's his driving ambition. Yeah. That's what he wants. Not only does he want to win the war, well, in fact, he doesn't really want to win the war. That's gone. The war that we see being waged on Skaro between the Khaleds and the Thals has been going on for so long. Actually, whoever wins it now, it's not about who's going to, whether the Thals or the Khaleds are going to win. It's about Davros becoming victorious in this. Yeah. Davros using the events of the war to get what he wants, which is purely his own step up to ultimate power. That's all he's using it now. And he goes so far as to betray the Khaleds, right? He gives the Thals some sort of secret ingredient that they can put into their missiles, which will break the surface of the Khaled dome. The only thing which is protecting the Khalids from being utterly obliterated by the Thal warheads. And he gives the Thals the power to do that because that furthers his own aims. Getting rid of his own race of people now, it doesn't even matter. That's just a step forward into power. So it's brutal. So from that side of things, it's following sort of Davros's path through that and his interplay with the Doctor as the Doctor kind of exposes these stages of Davros's own journey are really quite something. It's the first time we see those brilliant conversations that the Doctor and Davros have with each other. Their discussion of morality and ethics when the Doctor poses to Davros that if he had the power to unleash a deadly virus just by breaking a file that he holds in his hands, would he actually do it? Because you and I, of course we wouldn't do that. It's a terrible thing to do. But Davros, yes, I will do it. That to have the chance of life and death in my fingertips, I would break that file. I'm obviously misquoting, but he says he would do it. The power would set him up amongst the gods, and through the Daleks he will achieve that power. So the Daleks are his file. That's the Daleks are his virus, and he's more than willing to unleash them on the universe. And then besides that, below that, not deep below, it's really, really obvious. What Jason Thompson, who tweeted us there, kind of alluded to, which is, or what you mentioned actually, which is the whole kind of Nazi allegory. Yeah. That fascistic. It's so blatant that Nyder in when we first see Nyder, I think it's removed later on because there was someone had pointed it out that it's a little bit too close to the bone. He's wearing an Iron Cross Nazi emblem. All the overtones are Nazi, the way he moves, the salutes, the clipped jackboots, the kind of clipped way of speaking. It all, again, sort of plays on those memories of World War II. Yeah. It brings it right into the living room and plays out that kind of, that ideology of selfishness, of disregard, of complete lack of compassion, of power for power's own sake, for domination. It plays it right out there using tropes that everybody is still really familiar with in everybody's, it plays out in everybody's living room in a Doctor Who story, which, is actually still only Tom Baker's very first season. He's only just getting to grips with being the Doctor in this. And of course, we have some brilliant moments, throughout the whole thing. We have some classics, such as that whole ethical crunch, if you like, where the Doctor is finally able to blow them all up. Yeah. All the charges have been set, primed, the detonators, everything's all ready to go. All the Doctor has to do is touch those two ends of the wire, and that's it. Infant Dalek's gone, hibernation tanks exploded. That's the end of them, pretty much. It's going to take them a long time to recover from that. But can he do it? Does he actually have the right? And of course, Sarah Jane says to him, well, of course you do. You must do it. You have to do it. And he's like, but do I? Think of all the good stuff that happens because of, through battling against this evil, the alliances that are formed, the evolutions that are made, and all the good things that come from fighting against the Daleks. Sometimes, maybe that threat, that virus that the Daleks represent, in trying to cure that, there's a lot of good stuff coming out. So the Doctor, by taking away the Daleks, potentially takes that away as well. Yeah. And of course, he can't destroy the Daleks in the end because we need Daleks to continue through Doctor Who, so they're not really destroyed. Yeah. There's a bit of a monologue at the end of it where, when the Daleks, Davros is presumably being buried under the whole bunker when everything's kind of gone to hell, and the Dalek itself kind of rises up from the ashes or the rubble and gives us a bit of a monologue about how the Daleks will rise to power. They might have been set back a little bit, but they're still going to do what they do best. And it's a wonderful, wonderful story. And, when I'm saying, watch episode by episode, obviously that still applies to this one. But this is one story that I absolutely can watch completely back to back. I sat down with Freya to watch it. And it was the first classic series story she'd really watched. And she insisted, talk about cliffhangers, she couldn't deal with cliffhangers. She insisted that we watch all 6 episodes back to back. I did it with somebody else as well. I introduced somebody who wasn't a Doctor Who fan way back in the day when Genesis was out on VHS in the 90s, and said to them, let's watch this. Going for beers in a bit, but I'll show you some Doctor Who. Yeah, let's have some watch some Doctor Who for a bit of a laugh. And I put Genesis of the Daleks on, and we didn't end up going for beers. Because he wanted to sit through the whole of it. It's such a good story. Yeah. You can argue it has a little bit of padding, but it doesn't really. It's still part of the story. It's still, and it's almost like I don't know whether... I mean, it is written by Terry Nation. He is responsible for this, really. Robert Holmes had a lot to do with it. I think he suggested the idea of... him and Philip Hinchcliffe suggested the idea of going back to the Daleks' origins to Terry, because they wanted something different. They didn't just want to buy the numbers Planet of the Daleks type story that they'd had so many times before. But I think that forced Terry Nation to kind of produce what is arguably his best story for Doctor Who. Certainly in my opinion, yeah. I think it is. I don't think there's any other Dalek story really that kind of comes close to getting everything about the Daleks in one single story. I think it's brilliant. So it has to be in there, but it's not my number one.
That's interesting. It's a great story. Its place in the pantheon of Who is...
It's legendary.
It's
constantly in the top 3, pretty much, isn't it? In all these votes that Doctor Who magazine do and various other online polls.
I sometimes wonder if other stuff is sort of not overlooked as such, but it's what's the best Dalek? So it's Genesis,
well, this is probably why it's my number 3.
Yeah, so that's
and not my number 1.
I'm not denying its greatness. It's brilliant, and it does. It's a bit like some of the stuff in Magician's Apprentice, the whole morals and the kind of interplay between.
But
in
a way, it all started here, didn't it?
That's it. Yeah.
Even in Robert Shearman's Dalek story, it all started here, really, or was fully encapsulated.
And also, I think. Creating Davros, it gave that Doctor, that major foil. You were saying you had the Emperor Dalek and stuff in the second Doctor and things, but it's the Daleks are brilliant, but there's not much to them as a character. Whereas Davros has.
Well, there is, but they're so single-minded, aren't they? Whereas Davros has nuances, right? That's
exactly, and precisely, yeah. So I'm going to follow up that in-depth analysis of Genesis of the Daleks.
Sorry, did I rant on a bit?
No, it's good. No, but
I'll keep it short. Next one.
I can't follow it anywhere near as eloquently. So my number 3 is Asylum.
Asylum.
A xylophone of the Daleks.
A xylophone of the Daleks.
Asylum of the Daleks. From Series 7, Matt Smith's 11th Doctor.
Should be.
Series, yeah. So this...
Was it Series 6B? 7B?
Maybe, because it's still got Amy and Rory in it, so it probably was 6B. So this episode for me... is great for a number of reasons. I really like the the Dalek story within it. It's like the, what do they call it, the Dalek Parliament or something. They summon the Doctor, don't they? And they want his help, and they go to the there's a frozen snowy planet, isn't there? And
some great shots on that.
Yeah, like the ice stalk coming out of the snow and stuff like that.
And
yeah, that's it, coming out of the people, the forehead and stuff.
It's kind of mad, really, but let's go with it.
Yeah, I mean, they've not displayed those powers before.
Never,
but they're evolving and stuff. There's a load of classic Daleks in it as well. There's some quite moving drama between Rory and Amy. We discover why they'd separated and stuff, and despite the fact I think Rory is a bit of a wet fish, I actually really sympathised with him here, because he obviously really loves Amy and vice versa, but she felt it was about having children, wasn't it, and it kind of drove a wedge between them, and she's gone off to become a successful model, bit like MJ in Spidey, and he hasn't, and I liked their the reunion. Another great example of Who, in the midst of all this sci-fi bonkers, having some real character and emotion, and so like I said, I found that quite moving. But one of the big things for me for this episode, which will be a surprise to no one, was the introduction of Jenna Coleman as Oswin in it. Not just because she was great fun, and despite the fact that you never meet they never properly meet her and the Doctor, they have a great bit of banter between them throughout the episode, and then again at the end, it's quite heartbreaking when you discover that she's a Dalek, and she's in cased, she's been turned into one.
She is a Dalek.
She is. Yeah, she's not just in the machine as a human. So again, that was kind of bizarrely sort of sad, really. But also the shock of Jenna appearing. She'd been announced that she was joining as a companion, but it wasn't going to be until the next series, and then she pops up in this one. And I remember watching it, and I thought, it looks like Jenna Coleman. She's not supposed to be starting for another year. What the hell?
So that was a surprising one, wasn't it? Another deflection.
Exactly, and they did a great job of doing that, and that not
and seeding the mystery.
Yeah, exactly.
Because she dies at the end of it.
She dies, yeah, and then
you think,
yeah, and then she comes back again in the Snowmen. So that that surprise, just stuff like that, it's just brilliant. And it worked probably in a way because there was no location filming. She's all in a set, for it. But I love that surprise, reveal there. So that's a really good one for me. For
a worthy one. Yeah, I've always enjoyed
some
that. Some
nice character moments, some good Dalek action. It's a lot of fun. Just going to quickly skip to Twitter. James at H, who's at fitgeek_UK, says definitely Eve of the Daleks, Power of the Daleks, and Dalek invasion of Earth. And as for the rest, well, do you want extended media as well? If so,
is he giving us some anyway?
The apocalypse element certainly is high on the list. So I'm going to say
very good.
We'll take extended media. So
I hope somebody comes out with the mutant phase as well, which is one of my personal favourite Big Finish Dalek stories. I love it. I think it was their first one, if memory serves.
Really?
Yeah. And it goes back into the Dalek invasion of Earth. I think it's sort of set around that time when the Daleks have invaded and the people are kind of living. So it's pre what we see in the in the TV story. If I believe, I could be wrong. I haven't listened to it for a long time, many years. So my memory could be playing tricks, but I do remember enjoying it. That's for sure.
That's good. Sorry, I was just looking for other tweets there. We haven't had anything else yet, I don't think.
It's all right. We had a couple of responses. That's not too bad.
It's good.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. So, what's your number 2?
My number 2. Okay, again, I had to sort of. It's a toss-up on this one. I was originally going to go with Resurrection of the Daleks, which is a Peter Davison Dalek story, his only Dalek story. And again, it's one that has another great sort of Davros Doctor moment. It kind of furthers the idea that the Daleks and the Time Lords are having a little bit of conflict because the whole idea is that the Daleks are creating duplicates and they want to infiltrate the High Council of the Time Lords, again with a duplicate of the Doctor as well. And it's a very grim, very dark story, and it sees the end of Tegan. But I kind of had to move it to one side because my actual number 2 story is Remembrance of the Daleks, and my number 1 is number 1. So there's no moving that at all. So it's got to be Remembrance, which again is almost like. It's almost like a kind of reboot of the Daleks, if you like. It's the first time we see them in a new livery. I mean, the Daleks in Resurrection I love because they were, they were black Daleks. It's actually no, it isn't the second time we see the cream. It's the second time we see the cream Daleks, not the first time, because obviously we had Revelation of the Daleks before that. But Remembrance is such a good story. It's It plays on everything that the Daleks are good at. Actually, everything that Jason Thompson mentioned in his tweet there, the whole fascistic element of the Daleks is played out nicely. But it's really intelligently done because it plays out in a time when there are parallels within our own society. So the Daleks, really, they're in London, right? They're in Coal Hill School, which is great anyway. Yep. First time we've seen Coal Hill School back in the story. And of course, this is the 25th anniversary season of Doctor Who as well. So it's deliberately pulling things out of its past. And then, of course, we have the Dalek stuff, right? We see some brilliant Dalek stuff. I mean, the end of episode 1, I think, sees a whole Dalek ship dropped in from a crane. Right? They built a full-size prop, right, and they're dropping it in from a crane on an invisible wire with jets of steam coming out. Yeah. Never seen that kind of thing in Doctor Who before, ever, at this kind of level. So, and actually even before that, the start of episode 1, where the Doctor and Ace end up going back to the scrapyard, i.e. Foreman's scrapyard, and they see the fight between the Grey Daleks and the not unit forces, but the army forces of the day, who are having this big shootout. And it's the first time we see that effect where the Dalek shoots, blasts on it, and we see their skeleton revealed inside. That was a great effect. There's also a brilliant effect, which might have been in episode 1 as well, actually, when, or it could be episode 2, when a Dalek fires a gun and it passes through a window in the van, right? And to blow up something on the other side. It's brilliant. You see the laser bolt come through the van, super quick, right? It was in the van. I can't remember whether it's Ace or an army dude. Oh, it's the guy, and he sort of steps back. The laser blast pushes past him out through the other side window and blows something up the other side. It's astonishing. You don't need to do that, but they do it because why the hell not? They are throwing everything at this. I know Andrew Cartmel writes in Script Doctor as this being the ultimate Doctor Who story. He was so happy to get this one, made, developed and made, signed off, developed, made, and equally more happy even that to see everybody going for it, everybody involved in props, in design, in production, in the explosives, the SFX, the music, everything. This is Doctor Who dialed up to 11 in every single quarter, and it's really rare, I think, that actually happens. There's always something that doesn't quite work somewhere because they run out of time or they run out of money. But this is an astonishingly intelligent story, incredibly well done. And of course, there's a lot of mythology, a lot of mythology in it as well, right? A lot of Time Lord stuff. This whole thing now that we get the start of the Doctor being questioned, the Doctor's identity being questioned. There's a discussion about this other that may have been around at the time of Rassilon and Omega and at the start of the Time Lord's history. And I remember that really pricks up my ears. Like, oh, brilliant! They're messing up the Doctor's history. Fantastic. And there's actually a line in Andrew Cartmel's book, which is like, well, I think I probably should get it because I can read it out, but he says he doesn't give a fuck about 40 years worth of history from others. You know what I mean? Which is brilliant. And I think that is exactly the right attitude. I mean, he does care, actually, because he wants to get it right. But he's caring about the right things, not the wrong things. Not upsetting a line that might have been spoken, which might have established the Daleks or something in 1963. He didn't bother Terry Nation when he wrote Genesis of Daleks and rewrote the Dals as Khaleds. They just didn't care about it. And it's that kind of thing that Cartmel's doing, and Aranovich, of course.
Yeah, no, it's a great episode, and the famous moment of Ace with the baseball bat as well.
Oh, of course,
so I can't believe you forgot which was.
I haven't forgot. I just hadn't got to it yet. I've got a list of stuff that I'm getting to, and you just jump right ahead, mate. But probably just as well. Otherwise, I'll be going on about this for hours. So that was nicely revisited in Power of the Doctor. Indeed,
as well.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, this is another one that I that Freya watched. I sat down with her and watched it, and again. This got her into Ace. So Ace was now when she watched this was she was Freya's hero. It's a brilliant Ace story, and actually, I mean, it's really the first Ace story because we saw Dragonfire, in which she was great, but now this is fully Ace. This is her. This is proper Ace, and of course we get Mr. Bronson as the bad guy. Now only people of a certain age would recognise him as Mr. Bronson, but Mr. Bronson was the bad guy in Grange Hill, the school drama series back in the day, and he was an absolute bastard at the time, and he'd only just come out of that, and he showed up in Doctor Who. But of course, he's been in Doctor Who lots. He's a Doctor Who stalwart, and I cannot remember his name, so I'm just going to type in Mr. Bronson. Grange Hill. Michael Sheard. There you go. That's him. Yeah, Michael Sheard. He was in. I can't remember what he's in, but he's been in lots, and he was in the Stones of Venice, I think, as well. Big Finish Audio, where he's brilliant in that. But it's a cracking good story. Good story.
And you were saying there that Cartmel sort of said he didn't care about the history and stuff, but he did, but he also wanted to kind of put his own mark
exactly
on it.
Massively so. Yeah.
I think that's quite an interesting and important point, really, because you've seen people saying, well, so and so destroyed Gallifrey and so and so brought it back,
disrespectful to the work of such and such.
Yeah, and I think when a showrunner comes on, a head writer, whatever, they are in...
Or even any writer, really, regardless of whether they're showrunner, any writer wants to take a story.
Because they can pitch an idea, and, let's go with the showrunner thing. That person is the lead. They are in charge of the show at that time. They've got the job to put their stamp on it, their creative input, their vision. Because Doctor Who is a show, unlike many others, in which, it can... bend and change a bit within its parameters, and I think that a showrunner comes in and they're going to do it their way, basically, to enable them to tell the stories that they want to tell with it. And when Russell came back and blew up, Gallifrey was gone and the Time Lords were wiped out. Like for you as a long-time fan, what did you think at that point? Were people outraged by it? The way that they were, that Chris brought back Gallifrey, destroyed Gallifrey again. It's a tricky one, because Doctor Who obviously has a lot of threads that run through its whole time, but Gallifrey and the Time Lords, like, what am I trying to say? You get rid of them to create drama. You bring them back to create drama.
It's backwards and forwards, isn't it?
There's not a huge number of things that can come into play to create drama for the Doctor. In terms of things that are like personally...
which affect the Doctor directly, right? At the core of their character.
Yeah, the Master always comes back, and, it'd be great to see the Rani again, for example. People that have, caused that sort of conflict, you're not going to get, I can't even think of someone.
It's like okay, so like, even keeping it on topic, which is we think the Daleks. So in Evil of the Daleks, right? We'd seen the final end of the Daleks. That's what it was. That's what it was billed at, and it was for many years. But of course, they reappear in 1973's Day of the Daleks.
Yeah.
So and I think there may have been. I think I've read somewhere that there may have been people. I thought we'd seen the end of the Daleks, but hooray, good to see them return in whatever. And there's no explanation of how the Daleks survived their civil war in Evil of the Daleks. It might not be an event that's happened yet, or maybe it happened in the distant past, and it doesn't really matter. It's just this is now the story that we're telling, and you can reference that, you can headcanon that if you like, or we could write something into the script which glues the continuity together, which is always dangerous, I think, in my opinion. But this is the story we want to tell right now, and it's regardless of what you think of how it relates to the previous stuff.
The show, whilst it carries on, in a sequence, as it were, it's sort of not tied and beholden to its past in the same way.
We even saw at the end of Remembrance of the Daleks, Skaro being completely destroyed, and of course Skaro's back. We saw it in the one you mentioned in Magician's Apprentice. So,
and you get it in comics. I remember reading that comics are very cyclical, and so in Spider-Man, you have a great big Dr. Octopus story, and it's his final thing. He died in it. A few years ago when he swapped bodies with Peter Parker, and he became Superior Spider-Man, and then they eventually Peter Parker was out of it, and he was just a ghost for 6 months, a year or something, and then he got control of his body back, and then Dr. Octopus's body died, and that was the end of him, and then he was gone for a couple of years, but of course he came back. He's back again soon in it.
There you go.
Those characters are so intrinsically linked and identifiable to it all that they can't really stay away forever. And the idea, like the Master, for example, that Sasha's Master undoes Michelle's Master. Well,
I don't buy that.
I don't buy it either. I'm sorry, but the Master is a baddie, and within a tenure and an arc, there could be developments and stuff, but the Master comes back, it's going to be a baddie.
And causes chaos for the Doctor every single time.
It doesn't hang over to, if this was a long running say like police drama show like Bones or 911 or something,
The Bill,
those changes would have to be present across the whole thing, but it just doesn't really work like that in Doctor Who for some reason. Like you're saying, the Daleks, they've died, they've come back, they've died, they've come back, and that's just sort of it's a cyclical thing in sort of eras and chapters of a book kind of thing, and with the comics and stuff, new villains are introduced all the time, and some of them kind of catch on enough that they'll come back, and others don't, and the same thing happens in Doctor Who. I enjoyed Anthony Stewart Head's bad guy in
School Reunion,
School Invasion. I was going to say, yeah, he was great. I don't need.
I thought he was going to be the master when that came out. Actually.
Well, and that's another thing. Jinx Monsoon, for example, just because it's got ginger hair, it's not the Rani. And every person who...
But why not? Why not speculate about it, though?
Yeah, I suppose...
and have a bit of fun with that.
I like to see new stuff as well, and I suppose, when you get... Oh, Jonathan Groff, probably the master. Probably not. It's...
But that's part of the fun of being a fan, I think. It
is, but I also think we should welcome new stuff.
Yeah, we should. And I'm sure people do. I think where it tends to get a little bit nasty is when people stick to those ideas and completely obliterate and other opinions, other ideas, other perspectives, and kind of weaponize them, and then it gets pretty nasty, and that's not a place I want to go to. But I think healthy kind of speculation and debate about what may or may not be happening with certain actors and characters returning, not returning, blah blah blah. I think that's all fine. Yeah. Like you said, this thing about Missy's art. I mean, I've seen a lot of discussion on that, and most of it is perfectly fine, But there's a few different camps where. Actually, it's quite nasty, really, just because one person believes something and somebody believes something else, and I'd rather not get involved in those.
We don't need the infighting.
No. But
anyway,
can I just do my last few bits of remembrance, because I have to get these in, right? So if you're going to edit anything, edit that, right? So. There is in the novelisation of Remembrance of the Daleks, right? There is a brilliant sequence at the start of one of the chapters, which is about the abomination, and it's brilliant. It gets right into the psychology of this particular Dalek, how it's kind of shunned, and how it's and its whole mindset and everything else. And of course, it turns out to be the special weapons Dalek, which is phenomenal. And of course, it goes back to your story of Asylum of the Daleks, right? Because we saw it again very briefly in Asylum. And this is the first indicator where we have Daleks that don't quite do Daleks. They're Daleks, but they're slightly twisted in some additional way. And, for a race that, is all about purity. And this is the thing that drives the Daleks. And this is what drives the Civil War that we see play out through Remembrance, is that need for purity. Well, these Daleks aren't the same as those Daleks, so we've got to wipe them out. Again, brilliant allegories there to actually what we've just been talking about, different opinions. You don't believe what I do, therefore you're wrong. You must be wiped out. Yeah. It's almost like that. We see it being played out.
I was going to make
the reference.
To that, but I thought, I won't go.
No, I'll go there, mate. I'll go there for you. But also from that as well, within the novel of this, and actually, because obviously the novel comes from the TV script, but it massively influences the Virgin New Adventures which follow. It almost, in a way, kind of sets the proto-template for the New Adventures, which again went on to nurture some talent that went on to people like Russell T Davies, for example, and Paul Cornell, and a few other names, and so it's and the style of storytelling changed with Remembrance. The TV version to a subtle degree, but the novelisation to a far greater degree. There's a novelisation that went more in depth, more into character, more into the situation. And then finally, of course, what Remembrance gives is that countermeasures group, which have powered so many wonderful big Finish stories thereafter. And there's a reference to Quatermass as well, which is brilliant, which I love. So Remembrance is very close to my number one, actually. It's not quite.
Okay, that's because it's number 2.
We might have to edit some of this down, mate. We're on an hour and 20 already.
No, I don't know if I've got time to edit it this week. So my number 2
is
I was going to say one episode and then put the number one out to a bit of a vote on Twitter, perhaps. So
interesting.
I'm going to put Resolution as my number two.
Ooh.
Because I wanted to put number one out to see what other people think. Possibly. But I really, really like Resolution. It's a bit like Dalek, sort of rebooted, jacked up, and back for, you know, the doing the lone Dalek thing again that we obviously hadn't had since that series one story, and of course we get a fantastic new design in the Dalek as well. So
there's scrapyard.
Dalek. So I sort of, you know, I'm sure everyone knows the plot, but part of Dalek is uncovered during an excavation. Somehow magically reactivates other buried parts of Dalek around the world that then join the Dalek together again, and then it possesses Charlotte Ritchie and some pretty gross body horror stuff, and then takes her off to rebuild the casing and summon the rest of the Daleks down to you know, take it home again. It's just a brilliant adventure. You know, 13's first meeting with the Dalek. You know, you know, obviously seeing a woman and then really, you know, scanning and realizing, oh my God, you know, you're still the Doctor, and she belittles it so much. You know, all right, mate. And then you see this, you know, the really, like, it takes the stuff from Dalek and expands upon it. You know, you get it out of its shell. You know, the casing, like a octopus.
It looks great as well, doesn't it?
It's so good, yeah. You know, it takes over the woman. You know, it will do anything to survive, to be able to, you know, keep on with its mission and stuff like that. And they call it, it's a reconnaissance Dalek, so they're even, you know, double bastard hard over the others, you know. And then, you know, it has that brilliant bit where it takes a whole load of soldiers on one, you know, on its own, and the, you know, the Matrix, like, you know, bullets hitting
Dalek
each other,
v Army.
And then you get a great, you know, finale that the Doctor does. That was one of my best slides, which is slides along the floor, and it blows up, and then of course it's that moment is then you know, immediately continued in, you know, the story we got a year later. But amongst all of this, we get that brilliant stuff with Ryan and his dad, you know, which has kind of been building across the whole series, and you know, it just completely slows down to these character moments, and you know, I really liked that. You know, again, it like I was saying with Asylum of the Daleks. You know, these rich character moments happening in the midst of all this other chaos and everything, and yeah, I really liked it for that. And then of course it gets paid off, and it's powerful. You know, at the end when you think his dad's going to get sucked out by the Dalek into the sun and everything, it's just it just ticks so many boxes to me. This one is brilliant, and you know, I really liked the redesign on the Dalek, and which then, you know, became the black chrome version, you know, after this in Revolution. So yeah, this is just a
if I was doing the modern series Daleks, I think that would be my number one.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's just brilliant in every single way.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with this one for me. So what's your number one?
My number one, it can only be really, and I remember the very first time I watched this, I was just blown away by it. And I've watched this one so many times over the years, it's unreal, and I never get bored of watching it. It's not everybody's cup of tea, maybe like your Asylum of the Daleks, but for me, there is no finer Dalek story, possibly even Doctor Who story. It's so good. I'm
just going to pause you there because a tweet came in.
Oh, go on.
This is from Orinoco McGee. She chose Dalek because the stairs cannot protect you anymore. She also said the Series 2 two-parter, I mean, come on, that cat fight between the Cybers and the Daleks was brilliant. And I was going to mention it earlier. Do you remember that when the black orb thing of whatever...
Oh, yeah, from the Void ship thing.
It opened and the Daleks came out. Again, that was
a good moment.
Brilliant cliffhanger, kept secret, so good. Can I say all of them? Is that allowed? I mean,
of course it is.
They're all amazing.
They're all amazing.
especially Resolution, where Charlotte Ritchie is possessed. So thrilling. It's hard to choose just one. So yeah, thank you for that. So carry on.
You done?
One.
Yeah,
done. Yeah.
Can I carry on eulogising now about my number one? I was gearing up to something quite astonishing there.
Okay, sorry, I had to get
Doesn't
that
matter.
in.
Yeah, of course it is. It's fine. So my number one is, and can only be really, Revelation of the Daleks, the single Colin Baker story featuring the Daleks, which, as I said before I was interrupted, has always astonished me from the outset. I just, because this now is a Dalek story that appeals to my preferences, right? I do like the kind of dark humour of this, right? It is, and we had this chat in the Q&A, didn't we, whether Doctor Who should be dark and fun.
Yeah.
This is dark, but it's also fun at the same time, because it's like an Ian Banks story almost, where the humour, it's in a very grim world and a very grim setting, and everything about it is grim, even the humour, but it's nonetheless still funny, right? Which is brilliant. So I mean I love it, and it's also, there are bizarre elements in this as well, like Alexei Sayle's DJ, which is just so idiosyncratic. I mean, amongst all this grimness, you've got Alexei Sayle doing what Alexei Sayle does, right? Just being a complete, just, I don't know, whatever it is he does, really. Like, just characters with voices and different outfits and stuff, and going through the motions of being an American-style DJ, from hippie to rock and roll to Elvis, and, just having a whale of a time. And it's just bizarre, right? But you also get a really, I don't even know where to start with this story. I could just talk for this for hours, so I'm going to just pin it down to a few things that I really, really love about it. Firstly, we get Davros being Davros again, but a much more manipulative, subtle Davros, at least in the first part of this story, right? He's set up this brilliant trap. He's found himself a place in the universe. He is now the great healer, which is massively ironic given what Davros does, right? Yeah. And he's found a way to kind of rid the galaxy of famine. There's a famine-stricken quadrant of the galaxy, and he's there. He's in charge of all the stuff that gets processed or sent to the processing factories to be passed on. He's in charge of the raw material, basically, that creates food and solves problems for the galaxy. And he's resides like a spider at the heart of this ginormous funeral home for the rich and famous, the privileged few, who paid loads of money to have their loved ones sent into this funeral. It's basically a crematorium, right? But they're not dead. They're in suspended animation, almost some at the point of death, awaiting the time when a cure will be found, right? So they can be revived, sent back to their loved ones. And this is where Alexei Sayle's character comes in, because he is the DJ that, for just a few extra galactic credits, the people who are imbibed, right, can listen to, which to me sounds like absolute torture, right? But nonetheless, they can pay for this service, right? So they get it, which again is just brilliant. It's a little commentary there on sort of commercialism and the modern age and that. But whatever. And this is actually Davros being a proper yuppie of the day, right? This is 1984, 5, something like that. And Davros is seizing a money-making opportunity. But, of course, hidden beyond that, there's also an opportunity to restart the Daleks, if you like, right? So, and then it kind of gets really dark, because then we understand what's happening to people who have been entombed, or, who paid money to be part of Tranquil Repose, right? Which is the name of this sort of place. So that in itself is a story that is played out magnificently. We get some wonderful performances. Eleanor Bron as Madame Kara, right, who owns all the factories that I think process Davros's raw material, right, who generate, create the food. Her and Davros have a sort of commercial agreement that each side keeps pushing and testing, and finally Davros goes too far. Right, he needs more money from Kara, basically. So, she's not having that. She wants to have Davros's part, so she can own the whole thing herself. She doesn't really know what Davros is providing, but nonetheless, she wants it, so she doesn't have to worry about him anymore. And so she hires this assassin from the Grand Order of Oberon, which is played by, I can't remember his bloody name now, and I should do, because he was in every sitcom of the day. back when this thing was out. So it was really weird to see a sitcom actor in
just
Doctor
looking
Who.
at pictures. Is it? He came back, didn't he? He did. And he was really grumpy.
Yes.
1 foot, no, not 1 foot in the grave, man. Bucket, Hyacinth's bucket, man.
No. Oh, no. That's Joe Bell you're thinking of. I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about Orsini. There you go. That's his name, Orsini, who is played by William Gaunt. That's his name, right? Brilliant, brilliantly played by William Gaunt.
Right, okay. What I'm thinking of.
No.
Yeah, sorry,
so you're thinking of Joe Bell, right? Who is the guy who kind of runs the front end of Tranquil Repose. He's the kind of prissy, kind of slightly grotesque kind of guy who basically flirts with all the, and I use the word flirt. He basically leches over all the women in Tranquil Repose, apart from Tassenbaker, who he doesn't like. She dotes on him, but he hates her. He doesn't like looking at her. She doesn't fit his idea of what women should be, and she dotes on him nonetheless. And that itself, that little story as that plays out, it's a wonderful little tragedy, and and again it is sort of grotesque as well, because Tassenbaker initially starts out to be quite a sympathetic character, but she isn't. She's quite driven and quite nasty. She's very rude to the Doctor. Davros manipulates her really easily by playing on her affection for Joe Bell, and manages to get her in the end to assassinate him just by showing him what he does with other women. But to be honest, actually, she doesn't even do what Davros wants her to do. She does, but she does it almost accidentally, because actually she goes to warn Joe Bell that Davros wants him dead, right? And he's like, preposterous. I am. He gives this great speech about being, I'm Joe Bell, and who else can do my job? I'm indispensable in his company, as we all have done ourselves, maybe, only to find ourselves fired the very next day. So, but it's just brilliant. And then, of course, this whole business about spying, right? The fact that Davros can spy on everybody, the DJ can spy on everybody. A lot of the first episode of this is people spying on spying, and it's just, there's so much going on, Geoff. I could talk for hours, but I'm going to bring it all to a crunch by saying it has the best ending by a country mile of any Doctor Who. So I love the ending. The ending for this, all of this, is just brilliant. I cannot fault a single part of it. But it kind of plays down to sort of the last 10 minutes when all the kind of Kara's deception has been exposed, right? William Gaunt, Orsini's had his leg blown off, right? His squire Bostock, who's a disgusting boil marked kind of greasy baldrick of a companion, is almost dead as well. There's been a big shootout in Davros's cavern. The Doctor's striding around. Davros has been revealed. His chair is hovering, because that's what their Daleks do now. They hover. There is a scene which wasn't used in the original broadcast where we first see a hovering Dalek prior to Remembrance kind of walking up the stairs, but it wasn't used. It's come back in the special edition. So it's been kind of, you can watch it with updated special effects where it has that back in. So that's kind of cool. But Davros, there's this wonderful play again between Davros and the Doctor, and it's Terry Malloy and Colin Baker, who, as we know, are really great mates. And there's a moment at the end where so that the Grey Daleks have been called in. They're arresting Davros. There's a big shootout with the Cream Daleks. Everything's kind of exploding, and there's like and the Doctor goes to shake Davros's hand as he's kind of carted away by the Grey Daleks, and of course his hand's been blown off by Bostock, I think, who did it. And Davros kind of raises this stump, and sort of can't. It was almost like that moment. It's almost not friendship, but sort of recognizing each other's sort of each other as an opponent, and equal. The Doctor deliberately going to shake Davros's hand, and Davros actually doing it almost instinctively. He would never shake anybody's hand, you think, but he's about to shake the Doctor's, and then realizes he's been defeated because he doesn't have a hand to shake with. I absolutely love that moment. And then, of course, the button's pressed, the bomb goes off, the Doctor's told to get out, to run by Orsini. Boom, 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 everything is falling down. There's some brilliant brilliant direction from Graham Harper. The atmosphere, the lighting in all of this is just top notch. And we even get a sort of doll's house effect. You know that where the screen kind of the camera sort of seems to drift down through different levels of a thing. So it's just brilliant. And, you know, I think the one criticism this story often gets is that, well, Colin said it to himself when we interviewed him, actually, didn't he? That, you know, the Doctor's not even in it for half the story. He's not part of the main drama, but nothing happens in that drama without him being there. Because all of this is a trap set by Davros. Don't analyse it too closely, because you would have to do this and do that, and then why would you do this and all that sort of stuff. But whatever, this is Doctor Who. You know, the Cybermen have much more bonkers plans, and the Daleks, as we've said before. So, you know, but just the tone of it, the acting, you know, again, it's probably not, I don't know, I mean, it's another one which is dialed up to 11 for me. You know, another one they've really pushed the boat at. And Graham Harper this is another story, the second story directed by him, where we see his kind of trademark visual style. You know, that intimate, that close with the camera. You know, getting right into the action, bringing the viewer right there instead of sitting back and directing things from a gallery. He never did that. He was on the shop floor all the time. You know, taking a direct hand. You see the extras on that. His energy is just unreal, and you can feel that in the story. Again, everybody's given it everything. You know, it's just a fantastic story, and I'm even foaming at the mouth talking about it because I really need a glass of water. But still, it's astonishing. I love it and would recommend it to anyone.
I'm going to have to go and watch it again. I haven't watched it since the season 22 set came out.
It's on there, mate, looking as pristine and pin sharp as ever it did.
If anyone listening hasn't checked out our chat with Colin Baker, you should do, because he tells us which part of Davros he's got.
Oh yeah, he did.
which is worth the download and the listen alone.
Definitely.
So I'm aware that you've got to go in a minute. So I was going to say I was going to ask people to vote for Revolution or Eve of the Daleks, because I like both of them. But as we've been talking, I've been thinking, is Power of the Doctor a Dalek story? And technically, it's a sort of it's a bit
the
of
Daleks
everyone.
Are in it.
They are in it, but they're not.
You could
the
argue
main
it's a Cyberman
focus.
story as well.
Yeah, you could, or a Master story. So I probably can't bend the rules that way. So I'm going to go with Revolution of the Daleks, because it, as I mentioned earlier, carries on stuff from Resolution. You know, we get more awesome looking Daleks in the black look. You know, there's a sort of battle between the two of them. You know, the pure Daleks and these ones that they sort of feel are not pure. You know, some fantastic visuals with the Daleks rushing into the TARDIS and stuff like that. And there's some brilliant bits with you know, all the fam, you know, everyone in it. I'm not going to go on too long about it, but it's a brilliant episode. But out of the two of them, which one would you pick as a favourite?
Out of which two?
Eve of the Daleks or Revolution?
I would go with Eve of the Daleks, actually.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've had this chat about Revolution before, and you know it's not one of my... I like it, don't get me wrong, I do think it's got its moments, but there are certain things that I'm not so keen on, whereas Eve of the Daleks I think is a really tight script, tight location, brilliant story, working to make the most of its format, if you like. You know, the whole shortening time loop thing is a brilliant conceit, and it's wonderfully done, and it's full of surprises. And and we get Carl at the end looking at fireworks. So what's not to love? Yeah,
it is brilliant. Yeah,
so, but it's not as big scale. I like Revolution. Revolution has that kind of global feel to it, which I really like. So it's a good one actually, isn't it? Because that's kind of how Dalek stories work, isn't it? We get big, almost cinematic type Dalek stories, like the Dalek invasion of Earth from the early days, really, because that's essentially what it is. It's saying blowing the Daleks up on a big scale. You know, Journey's End, the Stolen Earth, Revolution of the Daleks, which, you know, okay, it's not universal, but it's global nonetheless. And then we also get these more intimate type stories as well, don't we?
True.
Like Power of the Daleks, probably, which is, you know, very, very confined in a way, like Eve of the Daleks, like there's another one, I'm sure, which doesn't quite come to mind.
But even Dalek.
Dalek, that was what I was thinking of.
In the bunker.
And the Daleks Master Plan, which is another example of the universe Universal's big scale type drama. The Chase, from the Heart of the Years, a flight through time, chase through time. It's. Yeah, and the Daleks can do that. They are that flexible, I think. You can literally do, as long as you don't lose what they're all about, which is this single-minded hatred, but you can still play around within that.
Like I was saying, the show has got, it's got parameters and, you can bend things and, it's nice to try some different stuff with it. And, I do really like Eve of the Daleks as well. It's a lot of fun, that one. And the time loop concept was really good on it.
Yeah, I do like it.
Anyway, you need to go, I believe, and this has become quite a long one that was not meant to be as long as this.
40 minutes.
So if you're still listening, thank you.
Well done.
And please tweet us and tell us your top Dalek, your essential Daleks.
Stories.
And we'll be back again soon with another essential episode. And also we're going to try and tackle the Doctor Who RPG.
At some point, he's going to have to read it. I'm going to have to go out and buy it. Until next time, listeners, bye for now.
Bye. Bye.